If you're making $500,000 a year or more, but you still feel financially trapped, this isn't about income. It's about architecture. And I'm going to prove to you today that the real reason that you may feel broke despite your massive success has nothing to do with how much you earn and everything to do with how you think about what you've earned. Because here's what I've discovered studying wealthy families and institutions. The difference between feeling financially trapped and feeling financially free isn't a dollar amount. It's a system. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to transform from trading time for money, no matter how much money, to building a self-funding wealth engine that buys back your most irreplaceable asset, your time. You'll discover the 3-step framework that institutions use to stack, shield, and scale wealth, and why this system creates time freedom while traditional approaches keep you chained to your income, regardless of how high that income actually gets. By the end of this video, you'll understand why you can make $500,000, $800,000, even $2 million a year and still feel one crisis away from losing everything that you've built. More importantly, you'll see exactly how to fix it. Let me tell you a story about 5 monkeys in a ladder. Researchers put 5 monkeys in a cage with bananas at the top and a ladder leading up to them. Every time a monkey climbed the ladder, they'd spray all the monkeys with cold water. Soon the monkeys learned to attack any single monkey who tried to climb the ladder. Then they replaced one monkey. The new monkey saw the bananas, went for the ladder, and got attacked by the others. He learned, don't touch the ladder, but he had no idea why. One by one, they replaced all of the monkeys. Eventually, none of the original monkeys remained. Yet, when a fresh monkey tried for the ladder, the group would still attack him. None of them knew why. They just knew that's not how things are done here. This is exactly what's happened with financial advice for high earners. You've been told to max out your 401k, diversify your portfolio, dollar cost average into index funds. And when someone suggests a different approach, like how institutions actually manage money, the financial institution attacks the idea. But here's the question. What if the original reason for those rules no longer applies to someone at your income level? You've probably felt this despite your success. Maybe you've experienced that nagging anxiety that your wealth isn't as secure as it should be. Maybe you've wondered why, despite making more than 95% of Americans, you still feel vulnerable in ways that make no rational sense. Maybe you've looked at your investment statements and thought, I should feel more confident in this. If that resonates with you, you're not alone. Research from Boston College studying families with an average net worth of $78 million found that even those wealth levels, or even at those wealth levels, they felt that they needed 25% more to feel truly secure. You see, that's not greed, and that's not even being ungrateful. That's the natural result of using individual financial strategies in an institutional world. And here's what's fascinating. Institutions never operate from this scarcity mindset. Banks don't panic during market downturns. Insurance companies don't second-guess their financial strategies. Family offices don't lose sleep over portfolio volatility. Why? Because they operate by completely different principles. The biggest misconception in personal finance is this: more income equals more time freedom. That's not just wrong. It's the trap that keeps high earners financially imprisoned, because income by itself is just a number. What matters is whether that income is buying back your time or enslaving you to generate more of it. Think about it this way. You make $600,000 a year. Congratulations. You've just earned yourself the privilege of having to make another $600,000 next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, every year until you retire or die. That's not wealth. That's a high-paying prison. Now compare that to how institutions think. When a major bank generates $600 million in profit, they don't celebrate by upgrading their lifestyle or wondering how they'll generate $600 million next year. They ask, how do we deploy this capital to create systems that generate income independently of our daily operations? They're not building income, they're building income-producing architecture. During the 2008 financial crisis, while individual investors were panic selling and losing decades of savings, institutions with proper architecture were doing the opposite. They were using their pre-built liquidity systems to acquire distressed assets at fire sale prices. They turned the greatest financial crisis in a generation into the greatest buying opportunity of their institutional life. Why? Because they had built systems that produced capital on command, not systems that required their constant attention to survive. Let me share the 3 secrets that separate institutional thinking from individual thinking, and why these differences determine whether your wealth buys you freedom or just more expensive obligations. Secret number 1, institutions stack capital. Individuals spend income. When you make $500,000 this year, your natural instinct is to think, how much can I spend? How much should I invest? That's consumer thinking, dividing money between consumption and hope. When an institution generates $500 million, they don't ask those questions. They ask, how do we systematically deploy this to build our stack, our foundation of stable, liquid assets that we can leverage without ever liquidating? The difference is profound. You see income as something to be allocated. Institutions see income as raw material for building wealth architecture. Apple demonstrated this beautifully during the 2008 recession. While most companies were cutting costs and hoarding cash defensively, Apple's cash reserves actually grew from $18 billion to $33.99 billion, and that was by 2009. They weren't panic saving or panic spending. They were systematically stacking, building their foundation stronger during the crisis so that they could emerge more dominant. Secret number 2, institutions shield their assets through strategic leverage. Individuals liquidate through fear. Here's what most high earners completely miss. The moment you sell an asset to fund something else, you've broken the compounding cycle. You've turned a wealth-building asset into consumption. Institutions understand this intuitively. When they need capital, they don't liquidate their best assets. They access their value through strategic financing structures. They shield their compounding base while deploying its power. During the 2008 crisis, Warren Buffett didn't sell Berkshire's stock holdings to raise $5 billion for his Goldman Sachs investment. He used Berkshire's existing assets as collateral, preserving the compounding while deploying capital opportunistically. That single shield maneuver netted Berkshire over $3 billion in profit. The wealthy understand this principle. They access liquidity without interrupting compounding. Secret number 3. Institutions scale through reinvestment systems. Individuals scale through more work. This is the most important distinction of all, and the key to buying back your time. When your income increases, your instinct is either lifestyle inflation or working harder to generate even more income. Either way, you're still trapped in the time for money exchange. But institutions, they think the opposite way. When their cash flow increases, they build systems to reinvest that cash flow into more income-producing assets. They create what I call velocity, where capital generates more capital, independent of their time input. A perfect example. After acquiring distressed real estate during the 2009 crash, smart institutional investors didn't just collect rent checks. They used those cash flows plus tax benefits plus appreciation to acquire more properties. Each asset became a platform for acquiring the next asset. And they created a self-funding expansion system. That's scale. That's how you transform from working for money to money working for you. Now, here's what I want you to understand about why this matters for your life. Every dollar you earn can do one of 2 things. It can buy you stuff, or it can buy you time. Most high earners accidentally choose stuff and then wonder why they still feel trapped despite their success. Let me show you what I mean with a practical example. Marcus is a software entrepreneur making $800,000 a year. Traditional financial advice tells him to max out his 401k, invest in diversified index funds, maybe buy some rental real estate. So he does exactly that. Fast forward 5 years, Marcus has a nice portfolio, but he's still working 60-hour weeks because the moment he stops working, his $800,000 income vanishes. It disappears. His wealth exists, but it's not freeing him. It's just accumulating while he remains trapped in the time for money exchange. Now contrast that with an institutional approach. Marcus takes that same $800,000 annual income and he implements stack, shield, scale. He builds a foundation of liquid, stable assets that compound predictably. He accesses the power of those assets through strategic financing to acquire income-producing investments. He creates systematic reinvestment cycles that compound his wealth without requiring more of his time. Within 5 years, Marcus has built the foundation of a system that's already replacing a portion of his earned income. How quickly he replaces all of it is entirely up to him. The system can be scaled aggressively or conservatively, depending on how much liquidity and discipline he applies. The point is, freedom comes not from guessing, but from building a system that puts you in control of the timeline. He can choose which clients to work with, which projects to pursue, which opportunities to take, because his lifestyle is funded by his system, not his labor. That's the difference between wealth and freedom. Wealth is a number on a statement. Freedom is knowing your time belongs to you, not to your income requirements. Here's what I want you to understand. That anxiety that you feel about your financial security isn't a character flaw. It's your sophisticated brain recognizing that something is structurally wrong in your approach. Because deep down, you know you're playing by different rules than the people who truly control wealth in this country. You know that when the next crisis hits, and it will hit, you're going to be on the defensive, not the offensive. You know that despite making more money than 95% of Americans, you still feel vulnerable in ways that make no sense. That vulnerability is real, and it's not going away just because you made more money. Studies show that even people with $25 million in assets feel like they need more to be secure. The problem isn't the amount. The problem is the architecture. You didn't build your wealth to spend your life worried about losing it. You built it to create options, to create freedom, to buy back your time so you can spend it on what matters most to you. But if you're using individual financial strategies in an institutional world, you'll never feel truly secure, no matter how much money you make. And more importantly, you'll never buy back your time. Because here's the harsh truth. Every year you delay building proper wealth architecture is another year you're voluntarily staying imprisoned in the time for money exchange. Another year where your time belongs to your income requirements instead of belonging to you. So let me walk you through exactly how this works, because understanding the stack, shield, scale framework is the key to everything. The stack phase. This is your foundation, building a base of stable liquid assets that you control completely and that compound predictably. The key is choosing assets that give you both growth and access without the volatility that forces you into panic decisions. Think of this as your institutional grade liquidity reserve, the shield phase. Once you've built your stack, you shield it by accessing its power through strategic financing rather than liquidating it. This preserves the compounding while giving you the deployment capital for investments. Here's the principle. Instead of breaking the compounding cycle by withdrawing capital, you maintain the growth while accessing the value through institutional financing strategies. You've preserved compounding while accessing capital. That's institutional thinking. The scale phase. Now you use the investment returns, the tax benefits, and ongoing compound growth to systematically acquire more assets. Each asset becomes a platform for acquiring the next asset. You've created velocity, a systematic reinvestment that compounds your wealth without requiring more of your time. So let's put some conceptual numbers to this. Year one, you begin building your stack with systematic capital deployment. Year three, your foundation has substantial value. You shield by accessing this value through strategic financing to acquire income-producing assets. Year five, the reinvestment generates significant annual cash flow. Your stack continues compounding, and you have substantial tax benefits. You now have meaningful passive income that you didn't have to work for. Year seven, you use that accumulated cash flow to acquire additional assets. Now you have substantial annual passive income. By year 10, you've built a system generating six-figure passive income while your original stack continues compounding undisturbed. This is how institutions think, man. This is how generational wealth gets built. And this is how you buy back your time. And this brings me to what I call the elemental case. The fundamental question that every institution asks, but individuals never do. If you had to survive every crisis for the next 50 years, what would your financial structure look like? Think about that question seriously. Not just the next recession, but every possible crisis over the next half century. Market crashes, inflation spikes, technological disruptions, personal health crises, family emergencies. If you knew you had to not just survive, but thrive through all those scenarios while maintaining your lifestyle and your time freedom, how would you structure your wealth? This is exactly why we mirror institutions. Because institutions, by their very nature, must survive every crisis. They can't just weather the storm. They have to be positioned to capitalize when others are forced to sell. When you build your personal finances this way, when you stack for security and you shield for flexibility and you scale for growth, something profound happens. You stop feeling anxious about money. Not because you have more money, but because you have institutional grade control over that money. You have a system that works whether the markets go up, down, or sideways. You have assets that generate income whether you're working or not. And you also have access to capital without getting on your hands and knees and begging a banker for approval. Most importantly, you have your time back because your lifestyle is funded by your system, not by your labor. The wealthy have a completely different relationship with their income. They don't see it as money to spend or save. They see it as raw material for building systems that buy back their most precious asset, time. If you want to understand exactly how they think, and more importantly, how you can start building these systems yourself, I've created a complete breakdown at warchestprinciple.com. You'll get my guide called How the Wealthy View Earned versus Passive Income, including the specific stack, shield, scale framework that transforms high earners from time trapped to time sovereign. This is about finally making your money work so hard that it buys back your freedom. Go to warchestprinciple.com right now. Transform from trading time for money to building money systems that give you back your time. The link is warchestprinciple.com. Welcome to the front lines.